the icon
Oh, here we go. Yeah.
all the way over. Yeah, there you go.
Wow, that's weird.
Okay.
All right, very good. All right, so welcome to Cemetery 101. And I put this presentation together. I'm the superintendent of Mount Pleasant Cemetery. And once I retired in 2013, I took on this job. So I've been doing it for about 9 years. And as I kind of alluded to earlier, it's kind of fascinating how a cemetery operates, and also learning all the lingo and all that. It was quite enjoyable. And so I put this talk together, and I hope you enjoy it. So to start off, this is specifically about Mount Pleasant Cemetery. However, it really applies to just about every cemetery in various ways. The terms are similar, if not exactly the same. The details are either similar or if not exactly the same. But it's, I learned on Mount Pleasant Cemetery. So my job as the superintendent, I'm basically responsible for everything that goes on with the cemetery, from mowing the lawns to weed whacking to fixing stones that are leaning or falling over. I'm responsible for the roads and the buildings, and I also do sales, and I sell plots to people and their families. So in case you didn't know, Mount Pleasant Cemetery is where you see that blue star, and it's that green area. And so it's located, right along State Road. And I'm going to refer quite a bit in a lot of the slides to the directions. And that's how we keep track of things. So, except that it's not really with the compass. It's not magnetic north. We call it cemetery north. So cemetery north aims towards Greenwood Street. Cemetery south aims towards Bolt Hill Road. East is towards State Road, and west is towards Main Street and the Piscataqua River. So here is an aerial view of that green area you just saw in the previous slide. And this is actually a slide from the new website that we're working on. And it shows Mount Pleasant Cemetery divided up into the various sections, which will be the aids that you'll use to help you figure out where people are buried. And these red lines actually run along actual roads in Mount Pleasant. So you can see how the different sections are. So before the digital age, we had maps. So here is a 1977 map of Mount Pleasant Cemetery. So it's kind of spun around the other way. So now you can see that State Road is on the bottom and Greenwood Street is on the right. And you can see those same sections, which, by the roads themselves. And if you look at a specific section or any of the sections, you can see there's a whole bunch of rectangles. And there are numbers in every one of those rectangles. And those are the family lots. So here is a detail of one of those sections. And this is what we call section F, but it's actually the section where the big flagpole is in kind of the center of the cemetery in front of the chapel. And if you look in the middle of that section, you'll see the flagpole. So you can see, as I was referring, there's a compass there, and it shows north going off to the right. So Greenwood Street's over that way. South is to the left towards Bolt Hill. Look at the bottom of the page. It says State Road, and that's east. And then west is heading towards Main Street and the river. And you can very clearly see each of those rectangles has numbers in it. And those, again, we call lots. So here is, I'm going to give you some definitions. So here a lot, when I say lot, which is one of those rectangles, that's a group of 10 plots. Now, what's a plot? A plot is another term for a grave. So each rectangle has 10 plots. And that's quite common in a lot of cemeteries. Some of them, they only have 8 plots. Brooks, for example, their lots, their rectangles only have 8 plots in each one. And that's just the way they chose to do it. So now back in the day, when Grandpa used to go and buy a whole lot for the family with the idea that he would buy it, and then there'd be 10 graves available for all the family to all be buried together. That was how it was done way back. And many times Grandpa would even buy 2 lots, so you'd have twice the amount. Now in Mount Pleasant, there are actually a couple of places where Grandpa bought 4 lots. So he has like 40 graves available for the future family. And I even have one where they bought 6. So you know, many decades ago, Grandpa was looking out for everybody and buying all these lots. Now, as the time went on and we get closer to today, and we all know that family members are not staying at home. They're moving away to the West Coast, you know, and working over there or going to Europe. And so that the children, will say, aren't really interested in being transported back here to be buried in the family lot. So families weren't buying a whole lot for the family. They were just kind of projecting and buying what they thought was, you know, the right amount. So people weren't buying lots of 10. They were buying something other than that. So as we look at the details of a lot, again, I point out north towards Greenwood Street, south is the other side, and then east and west. And if you can see in a lot, oops, this is when my fingers get too heavy, it shifts to another screen. So I got to get my cursor back here. And you can see on the north side, there are 5 graves or 5 plots, 1 through 5. On the south side, there are also 5 graves, but those are numbers 6 through 10. And like I said, in the old days, all 10 would go to one family. But nowadays, these 10 graves get divided up amongst several families. So here's some examples of that. If you draw your attention to the blue rectangles, so the top blue rectangle right here, that is centered on plot 4 and 5 and 9 and 10. So that is, you know, presumably a family bought 4 plots, and that's their family headstone centered in the middle. If we go down to this blue rectangle, happens to be a long one, and it is centered on 3 plots, 6, 7, and 8. And plots. And 6, 7, and 8. So that family wanted 3 graves, we'll say, and that headstone is centered on that. As I go over to this headstone, it's centered on plots 2 and 3, and because that family wanted that, and this one is centered on plot number 1. So you can see now, instead of one family owning all 10, and usually when Grandpa bought the whole plot, there would be one big headstone in the middle of that whole rectangle. But now, because multiple families are buying it, we end up with several headstones. And depending on how many each one buys is where these headstones are located. And occasionally, if not commonly, you have headstones covering up other headstones, or at least blocking. So maybe writing you have on the back of your headstone gets blocked by somebody else. So we have that kind of situation because they're being divided up amongst several families. So then I like to have this disclaimer. So cemeteries, they're a place for respect. and nobody has more respect for cemeteries than me. And you can tell if you by how nice Mount Pleasant is. And however, though, in this presentation, I'm going to tell some stories that I think are humorous and I want to share with you, but they are in no way trying to make fun of family members or do any disrespect to anybody. So I just want to say that, please take the humor in how it's offered and enjoy it, and not look into it any deeper. So now the cemetery is a business. Again, I thought that was quite interesting. The business side of a cemetery, or as I say, the cemetery as a business, and then also death as an event. People in general, family members, are not good with death, because it hopefully doesn't happen very often in your family. If you are good at it, then my condolences, because you've had some bad luck. But since the average person is not good at death and what's expected and what needs to be done first, what needs to be done second, the funeral homes and the funeral directors are invaluable in providing, as I like to say, they know the answers to the questions that you don't even know how to ask. So that's what's nice is funeral homes are wonderfully helpful when you have to deal with all of the answers, I guess, or all the aspects of burying a loved one. And the same with me as a superintendent. I'm pretty helpful because I know what you need to know. So I thought I'd provide a little bit of the history of Mount Pleasant Cemetery. I don't really know a lot about it. It's just that what was written down. But Mount Pleasant Cemetery formed in the end of the year, in December 29th in 1923. In 1924, in January, is when it organized as an association. And then July of the following year, July 1925, we purchased the Greenwood Street Cemetery for about $1,500. In 1930, Mount Pleasant, which was sometimes called Bolt Hill Cemetery, as State Road was called Bolt Hill Road in that 1930 era, before it became State Road, and Bolt Hill Road became where it, as we know it now. So I'm not 100% sure what the Greenwood Cemetery is or was. I do know Section A was most certainly the Greenwood Cemetery, and that is the oldest section of Mount Pleasant. Section B has very few people buried in it, very few graves, and C has nobody in it. But also now if you go down to H is another very old section of Mount Pleasant Cemetery. And then D, E, F, and G are also our older section. So in 1946, the cemetery consisted of 11 acres. So I'm guessing it was A, B, C, H, and I, and maybe D, E, F, G, to make that 11 acres. And then that whole other section from J on was added later. In 1958, these granite cemetery gates were installed. They were donated by Lillian Norris to honor in part her father, Albert Hurst, who was a colonel in the Civil War. Also in June 1966 is when our roads got paved. This is an interesting picture. This is our number 8 schoolhouse when it was utilized as a fire station. If you look to the left, you can see there's a swinging, whoops, oh shoot, hold on. If you look to the left, you'll see there's a swinging door open, and that's half of a door. There's an also swinging door to the left of that, and there was a fire truck that was stored there. Then if you move to the right, you can see where the entrance door is, that's partially open. And to the right of that, if you look closely, there are another set of swinging doors. And that's where another fire truck was stored. When the fire department was built down in town, this ceased to be a fire station. And then it became the storage building for Mount Pleasant Cemetery. They would keep their equipment in here. And that served as that garage until, well, it was started in 1967. And then it stayed there until 1995 or 95 or 6. This is the chapel that's on Mount Pleasant. And it was built in 1973, and it was donated by Olive Blaisdell. And I was talking to Norm Vetter, who was a local Mason, and he said he remembered helping put the bricks on this chapel when he was a student and a vocational student learning masonry. So he participated in building that chapel. In 1975, 7 more acres were purchased, and that's the area in the woods heading towards Bolt Hill Road that most of you don't know about. But we have 7 more acres in the woods. Also, there's a small cemetery almost across the street from, no, I shouldn't have said it because I can't remember the name of the street. But anyway, it's about halfway between 236 and State Road on Depot Road. So if you're on Depot Road, about halfway between 236 and State Road, there is a small cemetery. It's called the Fry Cemetery, and it's right along the road there. That is part of Mount Pleasant. And as I said, the new garage was built in 1996, and the number 8 schoolhouse went back to the town. And then the town basically gave it to the Historical Society. So now we have the number 8 schoolhouse. So as I said, part of my job is really to mow the grass and make the cemetery look nice and keep track of who's being buried where and coordinate the digging and burying of people. When things slow down, my crew and I have 2 guys that work with me. We look for other projects to keep us busy. And those other projects may involve, trimming the trees, correcting stones that are leaning or falling over or cracked. And that's what, so we take on other projects. And so here's a slide of us trying to correct this stone, which was leaning over. And we end up doing this quite a bit, to the tune of I don't know, 6 to 10 monuments straightened out each year, and 25 or 30 footstones being straightened out. So I'll give you a couple more definitions. A headstone, which what we're looking at now, is in the business, it's called a monument. And a footstone, which you're familiar with, if it's a flat footstone, it's in the business is called a marker. So this is, you can see us straightening out this headstone. What I want to point out in this slide, if you look and see where these tools are, you'll see there's a big, long granite piece here. And this is probably 10 inches wide by 10 inches deep and probably 12 to 16 feet long. And if you also look at what the stone is sitting on, there is a same or very similar granite piece, about 10 inches wide, 10 inches deep, and it goes in this direction all the way over, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 headstones installed on this big granite beam, we'll call it. So it was interesting. In my early years, we were straightening out headstones right and left and making a big difference. I was enjoying it, and the crew was too, because the cemetery looks nice when the headstones aren't falling over. But there are several of these situations where these giant granite pieces or beams, I'll call them, were leaning over, and so you have 5 headstones that are all leaning and eventually going to crack and break or fall over. And basically, I didn't have the I don't know, guts, I guess, or I was afraid to tackle these for 2 reasons. We only worked 4 hours a day, and I wasn't sure the operation, if we began it at 8 o'clock in the morning and we normally quit at noon, if we started to tackle one of these projects, could we complete it, 3 men in 4 hours? I wasn't sure of that, and I didn't want to leave it overnight, half done. And then also I was worried about the danger of this, of trying to make this, try to fix these because of all the weight involved. And so I put it off for several years. And then I think probably about year 5 or 6, we decided to tackle one. And it was amazing how easy it was. All my concerns were for naught. I think we tackled it and we had it done in less than 2 hours. It was more like an hour and 40 minutes. It was an absolute piece of cake, and made us felt pretty good. So as an example, I'm going to show you a film here. Last summer, we tackled the Rogers Cemetery over on Rogers Point Road. And I got this. And Roseanne and Jan were there, and Tracy came by as well. And so here's the situation that I'm talking about. This is in, I forget his last name, but this is somebody's front yard. It's in their front yard. These have been leaning over for decades. And you can kind of see there's a lean to it. And what the operation entailed was we would dig dirt out in front of the big granite piece, and then we'd have to dig a ramp or a trough so that we could use these floor jacks and jack them into place. And the man's foot that you're looking at is one of my cemetery workers and a good friend of mine. His name is Michael Myers. He lives over in Dover, and he volunteered to help me with this. And I'll play the video for you. Oops, let me get it big first.
Using car jacks to jack it up.
Oh my goodness, Chris.
Now that it's
Oh no.
free, there it goes.
The lady in that wooden toolbox.
There it goes.
Oh yeah.
Straightens it right up. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. That is amazing. Oh my God.
Watch the thing break. Make me look stupid. It's incredibly easy. We got to go a little beyond. Settle on the dirt we had.
Just a smidge. Isn't that impressive? Wow, I can't believe that.
So the good picture is showing you the other one at the same time. This one's straight. Take that photo. Get the other one in the background. Yep. But this one, like stand here and you'll see it.
That's
So I gotta get out of this. So it was, and I left the audio on because when the fans go wild, it's fun. So, but anyway, that's how we did it. And then once you get it jacked into place, you just backfill with the dirt that we took out, and you stuff it under in the cavity that was created when we leveled it or when we jacked it up, and it amazingly stays in place. And like I said, it goes pretty easy. It's kind of fun. So here's a picture of the cemetery. And so you can see what's written on it. It says, "What's wrong with this picture?" So if you look around in the foreground and in the background, I don't know if you can see what's wrong or what's going on, but you can follow the cursor. And you can see there's a hornet's nest. And what's funny is we were mowing the grass here, and we were, weed whacking, at the base, and we never noticed it. And it wasn't until I was this far away on the tractor and looked over that we actually noticed that was the size of that hornet's nest. And it was like, whoa. So that had to be taken care of. So we got rid of that. So now we'll go into some more terms. People are either buried in a casket or they're cremated. And so we call somebody that's in a casket a full burial, and the other people which are in an urn, cremations. And urns are interesting. Cremations are interesting because there are a variety of urns that you can buy. Some of them, reflect marble boxes. There are others that are, look like ancient jars or something like that. And then I've seen people be creative and have ashes buried in a fishing tackle box because the man was a big fisherman. There was another gentleman that his ashes was placed in his cowboy boots, and we buried his boots. So there's some interesting things you see when you work at a cemetery. Going back to the full burials, because those are in caskets. And many years ago, early on, the wooden caskets would be put in the ground, and several years later, the wood would rot, and then the casket would collapse, and the ground above it would also collapse with it, and we would end up with these sunken graves. So around the mid 1940s is when burial vaults came into place, and that's what you're looking at here. This is a concrete box that the wooden casket would be placed in, and then the cover is put on top. So now when the wooden box deteriorates and eventually falls apart, there's no sunken grave, there's no collapsing of anything. The concrete cover keeps everything, all the structural integrity. So that's something that's new and come into play. Well, new 1940. Another thing that you may have seen on stones in cemeteries are the words perpetual care. And this was kind of interesting. Again, back when Grandpa would buy the family lot, it seems like it was a family routine, probably a weekly routine, either on the way to church or on the way back home from church. The family would stop at the cemetery and water the flowers and make sure everything is up to snuff. And again, like I said, that was a weekly thing. And then eventually it stopped being a weekly thing. And through the decades, then it maybe became that the care for the family lot would be designated to one person. And, you know, maybe it was grandma, or maybe it was somebody's mother. And they would periodically go over and make sure the flowers are watered and make sure that things are, you know, it's tidied up and looking good. And as we move through the decades, the cemetery, recognizing that the families weren't getting over there as often as they like, the cemetery offered care services, and we called it perpetual care. If you paid the cemetery a certain amount of money, then we would not water the flowers, but we would mow the grass and make sure things are tidy and clip the grass, or nowadays weed whack. But we would take care of all of that for a fee. And so a lot of people took advantage of that and bought perpetual care. And as a way of knowing that they made that purchase, they would be engraved in their stone somewhere. There were some families that still had, you know, grandma was dedicated to coming over and she wanted to do that. So they would not invest in this perpetual care. And there were also people who were, you know, I'll just say defiant. They're not going to pay somebody to take care of this when they can do it themselves. So not everybody took advantage of the perpetual care. But as the decades rolled on, more and more and more people took advantage of the perpetual care, to the point that almost everybody had perpetual care. And so the cemetery would keep track of, you know, what lots to mow and what lots not to mow by, I guess in Mount Pleasant, they used sticks. So they had these stakes, or not sticks, but stakes. So they'd have this stake, they would drive into the ground, and the people mowing, you know, with the push mowers would know that, oh, I got to mow this one. And if you didn't have a stake in the ground, well, that one, you'd skip it, because that's the family's responsibility to mow that one. So some lots get mowed, some lots didn't.
Yeah.
And the state determined it. Well, that didn't take families very long to realize, hey, if I have a stake driven in the ground, the cemetery people will mow my lot. So they would go over to the neighbors and pull up their stake and drive it into their ground. And we would mow, you know, we'd end up mowing their lot. Well, then that didn't take the cemetery very long to say, well, enough with that. Everybody has to have perpetual care. So now it's mandatory. And we give everybody perpetual care when you buy a lot or when you buy any plots. And that's all figured in so that the cemetery can look its best. So then we have burials and headstones. How do you know where to put a headstone, and how do you know where to put dig a hole? Because these holes are specific, and that's all you know, part of my job. We talk about these lots and how they're big rectangles. Well, how do you know where these rectangles start and stop, and where are they? And the truth of the matter is, we have the old-fashioned coffee cans, the old you know, Maxwell House and such. We have a bunch of those, and they're filled with concrete, and they are buried just below the surface at every corner of every rectangle. And I'm able to go out there and figure out, yep, you know, there should be a coffee can over in here, and I have like a sounding rod, and you find these coffee cans, and then you know where the lot is defined. And if you know that you know, the Bartlett family wants their headstone centered in that whole big lot, then you can figure it out and put the headstone in the right place. And or you if you need to dig a hole, then you know what number that grave is. If you remember back to that green slide, we had 1 through 5 on the north and 6 through 10 on the south. And if I need to open up number 7, I can figure that out using the coffee cans and dig that hole. So if you look at the top of this page, it says mistakes. And that's where the interesting part comes in. And let me start first by saying I have not really come up with any mistakes yet. However, any mistake I might make probably won't be noticed by friends, family, and or the next superintendent for years down the road. And then going with that, mistakes made, say mistakes made in the 1950s or the 1960s by previous superintendents might not be noticed until I have to do something in that area. When I say mistake, somebody buried in the wrong place or something like that. And again, let me say, I haven't come across it yet, but the possibility exists. And a few examples of this would be, I had a gentleman that contacted me and he said his son-in-law has just passed away. And he was hoping that there was room for his son-in-law to be buried near where this man's wife was buried. So this man had bought 2 graves and his wife was buried in one and the other one was for him. And he was hoping to find something for his son-in-law nearby. So I looked and there was nothing available nearby. But as I looked, I saw that his wife was on the end of a row and there was a possibility that I could put his son on the end of that end, on the other side of this man's wife, and add on to the row. And I said that to him and I said I needed to check because there was a big tree nearby with roots and I wanted to make sure that it was possible. And the man was all excited. He goes, that would be great. He says, if you could, if you could do that, that would be great. And then my son-in-law is buried right there next to my wife and me. And so I looked into it and found out that, yes, I could add that grave. And I went back to the man and said, yes, I have good news. That grave is available. And as a matter of fact, there are 2 graves that I could add on that end without any problems. And so there were actually 2 graves available. And the man got even more excited. He goes, that is great. He says, I can use that other one for my daughter and I'll take them both. So he did buy both. And then the time came to bury his son-in-law. And so we dug the hole. And about 3 days before the burial, he calls me up and he says, Paul, you dug the wrong hole. And I said, no, I didn't. I said, whoops, I got an echo now. I said, no, you said to put, your son-in-law next to your wife. That's what we talked about. And he said, no, he says, that spot next to my wife is going to be for my daughter. Then she'll be married, she'll be buried next to my wife. He goes, we don't want my son-in-law buried next to my wife. My wife didn't even like him. So you have these kind of situations whenever there's 2 graves, you got to make sure that, you know which one's going in which one. There are also times that I see where there are 2 graves and maybe the husband goes in on the left and the wife goes in on the right. And then for whatever reason, miscommunication or otherwise, the headstone comes back and it's just the opposite. And obviously, well, not obviously, but many times the burials happen before the headstone gets made. So somebody made a mistake. I'm not involved in the headstone. It's between the family and the headstone people. So, presumably somebody on the family got confused and said, no, he's on the left and she's on the right, when in fact it's not that way. But there are mistakes that can happen, and they can be kind of funny and interesting. Let's see. I am gonna, before I open it up to questions, I'm gonna go to one more. I'm gonna give you a sneak preview of the website that is coming. So this is a website that would be available to anyone, and it would help you in the search for people that are buried in Eliot. When you click on the link, you're going to come to this screen, and there's a drop down right here. And this website, as you can see, is for a lot of cemeteries. These are set up in alphabetical order, so it actually works out pretty good for us. Brooks is on the top. This is one in Pennsylvania. The private cemeteries is next. Here's another one in Pennsylvania. Here's one in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and there's Mount Pleasant. So you have to locate the cemetery you want, and I'm going to go to the private one because that's the interesting part of this. So we click on it, and then you would type in the name of the person you're hunting for. I'm going to put in Fernald, just for example. And if I know the first name, I could put it in, but if I don't want to restrict to that Fernald, let's see how many Fernalds we can find. So we click on this, and these are all the Fernalds that are buried in the private cemeteries in Eliot. And so what's important is the section, and then I'll give you a hint here, the block and the lot they're always the same number. So we'll just call it the lot because that's a term you're familiar with. So section, whoops, let me go to this one. I'm going to go to Andrew Pepperell Fernald, and he's in section 4E, and he's lot number 1. So let's select him. And this would be the next page. And so this is for people for anywhere in the world. So you can see over here, we have Andrew Pepperell Fernald. He died in 1821. He's located in section 4E, lot 1. And so here's a map of where Eliot is in the world, the bottom of Maine. And then here's the town of Eliot sectioned off. You can see that 4E is in the far east portion of Eliot. So that's really just for show. It really doesn't get you there. Here's a write-up that tells you where Eliot is. The next section talks about our Adopt a Cemetery program. The real meat and potatoes of what you're looking for is down here in the third picture. So here is a satellite view. And again, if we look down here, although it's a little bit cryptic, it's section 4E and block 1, which is lot number 1. So if you go here is number 1. It's the Fernald Cemetery at 52 Goodwin Road. So we'll scroll down and we'll read what it says about it. So we have lot number 1, Fernald Cemetery, Goodwin Road. It's located on the east side of Goodwin Road at approximately 52 Goodwin Road. And it shows what town map it's on, and we even have a GPS location. If it's adopted, we'll have it written here. And below I have a list of who are buried here. So there are 13 people buried in this cemetery, and the guy we look for is this Andrew Pepperell Fernald, and he was a general in the Revolutionary War. And he was born in 1753 and he died in 1821. So that's what this will do for you. I'm just going to show you one more thing. If I click on this button, I go back to hopefully I go back to, there we go. So again, we're still in Eliot. I'm going to put in just another one just to show you a different area. I'll put in another common name, Dixon, and search. And here are all the Dixons that are buried in the 170 cemeteries in Eliot. I'm just going to select one. I'll go with Henry. And again, the same old stuff. So now we can see that Henry is in section 1C, block 140 or lot 140, which is cemetery 140. So 1C is right down here at the very bottom of Eliot, on the way to Kittery. Again, we'll all go all the way down to the third picture. And you can see exactly. So 140, where is 140? Oh, way over here. So that's over on Dixon Avenue or on 13 Eldridge Road. So we're down in the Pleasant Street area, Main Street. Here's the causeway down here. And you can see all of the other cemeteries that are in this area. And I want to put out a big shout out to Roseanne, because Roseanne was the key person that located all of these stars, whether they're here or on the other side of the street. She's the one that did the research and knows where all these locations are. And also the GPS information and all that. I have Roseanne to thank for all of her effort. 170 cemeteries we had to do this for. And he provides this kind of information on all of them. So that is all I have. And I'll get out of this, hopefully. Can I? Actually, I don't need to. All I gotta do is go to this. Whoops, come on. Does this work? Let's see. Oh, come on. Trying to get back.
You want me to stop you from presenting?
Yeah, or I can stop. Yeah, I don't need to share anymore, do I?
Right.
There we go. Yep. So any questions or?
Let's see. We'll have some unmutes. I'm gonna unmute some folks. Or raise your hand.
Yes, Carol.
Oh, no, I didn't have anything to say. I just raised my hand.
Well, Paul,
I
I'll
did,
just
I
say
did.
that the website is fantastic. I got a chance to look at it the other day with you, and all the data that's been collected by yourself and by Roseanne, and the data entry is phenomenal. It's a lot of information, hundreds of hours, I think you mentioned. You know, collecting the information, loading it in, and documenting it all in a way that we can search and find this is fantastic. And I just saw Dixon, which is my husband's last name with a CKSON. So
Yep,
I
yep.
will have to check that out and see who's here in Eliot. But
That was a lot of work. Wow, you guys did a phenomenal job.
Oh, thank you.
Stan and Paul, wow.
I've got a
I have a
question.
question.
Paul.
Go ahead, Jack.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, go ahead. I'm not sure whether I'm muted or unmuted
No,
here.
you're not muted.
It, on those long granite
Beams.
logs or beams, I guess you call them, what did you use to reattach a stone to that? Once you got them up correct, and you had to break them off probably to get them so that they could be put back on correct and upright. What did you use?
Well, actually, we never broke any because they were, they were leaning with the beam.
With the beam?
However, some of them just couldn't stand the stress and they broke off themselves.
Yeah.
Before we got there. And what we did is most of the time, these were inserted in a pocket that was cut out of the granite.
Yeah.
And so we would have to chisel out or drill out that part of the stone that was still in the pocket to remake or recreate the pocket. And then we would mortar it back in, just like they did in the old days. Although sometimes what they would use is lead. They would put the stone in the pocket and then pour lead in and let the lead keep the stone in the pocket.
Yeah.
But yeah, just mortar in the pocket is good enough.
Did the lead work well?
I'm gonna say yes. It was a real, bear to get the lead out of there.
Yeah.
Question.
Yes.
The custom of burying suicides upside down, does that vary by cemetery or location? I have a cousin of my husband's who committed unfortunately, suicide. And when you look at the diagram of the cemetery this happens to be in Nyack, New York, they actually drew the fact that his head and body were in the opposite direction from everybody else
Not
in
fair.
that area.
No.
Yeah, I don't even know most of the time how somebody passed away, unless, it's community gossip or something. But I'm not interested in how they passed away. Everybody goes in, the same way in our cemetery. And that's interesting. That's kind of weird, I think.
I have a question. This is Carol. Who is the keeper of the deeds?
Well, that's an interesting question. We keep copies of the deeds, but the deeds, and when I say deeds, I gotta use quotation marks because they're not real deeds. Real deeds are registered in the county seat of Alfred, and these are not like that. These are really cemetery deeds, which are official paperwork that states that the purchaser owns the plots, or he owns the rights to the plots. We don't worry too much about whose name is on the deed, because, like, as I was saying, if grandpa buys the deed, when he passes away, he hands it down to somebody, and nobody's going to think to call the cemetery and say, oh, by the way, Frank doesn't have the deed anymore. He passed away. He gave it down to his son, Hiram or whatever. And so the cemetery, in my respect, in my capacity, we lose track of the deeds, who's in possession of them. So our simple rule is whoever is in possession of the deed controls the plots.
Got it. No, I'm asking because my parents purchased plots in Eliot years ago, and nobody has the deeds as far as I know. And I reside in Portland now.
Yeah, and that is commonplace. Most people have lost the deeds.
Right.
What do you do in a case where people set up headstones ahead of time and it's in a family graveyard, but those people moved to California and decided to be cremated and buried out there, and they are. So now you've got a headstone sitting there with two people's names on it and their years of birth on it and nothing else. And they're empty plots. They
Yeah,
just stay there?
Oh, they can stay there. The question is, when you're, let's say you're doing an audit and you're going through the paperwork, and actually this is my opportunity to show you. So here are the records of Mount Pleasant Cemetery, and you can see. So here's, there's this old book, and there is a lot, and actually I'll tell you, that is lot number 70. And those are the people that are buried there. And you can see there are four plots that are open still, but the ones that are buried there are written down. And so this is how we captured all the information.
Wow.
And there are actually 3 copies of this book. I have one, the secretary has one, and the treasurer has one. And whenever I make a change to this book, I have a change sheet that I fill out and I send it to the treasurer and the secretary, and they update their books. So in case there's a fire or something, the records aren't lost. But so to answer your question, so I would go to my book and I would look and see that nobody's been buried there. But then I go to the headstone and I see that it appears that somebody's been buried there because there's a born date and a death date. And then I'm forced to wrestle with, is the headstone right, or is my records right? Many times, I don't know about many times, sometimes it's in the records that this person is buried in California and their name is only here, not buried here, buried in California. So it clears it up, but otherwise it ends up being a question. Because like I said, mistakes can be made. Maybe the headstone is correct and there in fact somebody is buried there. And the records don't reflect it. Now, one way we can confirm it is to probe. And if there's a full burial, it's easy to tell. If there's a cremation, it's hard to necessarily find that urn. I document every time I bury a cremation, it is locked in, to the inch basically of where they're located, so that the cremation urn can be found again if need be. And also, funeral homes are putting in a coin or a metal, something metal, so that we can find them with a metal detector. And if you need to find it, the cremains at a later date. But yeah, that's the answer to your question is, you don't know.
I'll give you an example. My grandmother bought a lot of 6 plots in Illinois. And she and her husband used 2, and my parents were to be buried in 2, and the other 2 are just open, available. But then my father, in his later years, they lived near Albany, New York, and they opened a national cemetery in near the Saratoga battlefield. And so he decided to be buried there, and she would be buried with him. But when they bought the stones for the lots in Illinois, they bought them with the price included the date of death. So we just call the stone mason, or the people that we bought the stones from, and say, father died, here's the, and they need the death certificate, they get the right dates, they go out to the cemetery, they put the date on, but they were not buried there. So my parents asked the cemetery keeper, what happens? He says, well, you have to understand, if someone comes to the cemetery and asks where you were buried, or if you're buried in the cemetery, I have to tell them, no, you're not buried here. But if the person were to go out and look for the Hofstetter stone, they would see the information.
Yep. And so I'll tell you a funny story that happened at my cemetery. I got a call from a lady, and she goes, my son just passed away and we had him cremated. But he married this girl, and they moved out of Maine and they moved down to South Carolina, and she wants him to be buried with her family down in South Carolina, and that's okay. I guess that's what's going to happen. She said, but I would like to get some of his ashes, a small portion of his ashes, and have them buried on top of my husband, who is buried in Mount Pleasant Cemetery. Is that okay? And I said, yeah, that's okay. She goes, how much would you charge for something like that? Well, I mean, my charge for digging a hole for cremation is $400. And that involves the paperwork that goes with it. And that's part of our income. So I tell the lady, she goes, how much would it cost to bury just a little bit? I said, my charge is $400. And she started screaming. She goes, that's ridiculous. She goes, it's just a little bit of ashes. And it was almost like I didn't do this, but I wanted to say, oh, just a little bit of ashes? Okay, $8 then. It's like, it's not prorated. It is what it is.
Well, you would think that they could go back to the, centuries past, whereby if a stone is actually placed in memory of someone who is buried somewhere else and not necessarily physically under there, they would say, in memory of so-and-so, born such and such, died such and such.
Yeah, and that's a great idea, but what I see far too often is they can't even, and I'm being critical here a little bit because I see it. The families can't even put the death date on. There are so many stones that I have where people have been, they had the headstones ahead of time. So you put the birthday on and then you leave the death date blank to be completed, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. And the poor, the person passes away and the family drops the ball and never it may even be prepaid, but the monument company doesn't know that it's time to go put it on and they haven't been given the information. So there are death dates that are never put on stones. And that's such a shame. Anything else?
Thank you.
I'll give you.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll give you one more funny story. There was a funeral, and my crew and I are responsible for digging the hole and getting everything ready. And then what we do is we hang out, at the edge of the woods, away from everything, so that we're not in the way and we're inconspicuous. And we're down there with the vault people and also with the backhoe guy who does the helps fill in the hole. And we're all way down back. We see the procession coming with the hearse in front and a big long line of cars. And they turn down into the cemetery and they all start, heading over towards where the burial is. And all the cars are following. And then all of a sudden, the fifth or sixth car in line takes a right and gets out of line and heads down to where we're all standing. And the other cars keep on going off on, following the hearse. And he comes down and he parks right down next to us. And I can see he's got his white shirt on and he's got a bow tie on. And what the heck is this? He gets out of the car and he has no pants on. And he's got underwear on, but he doesn't have any pants. And he looks at us and we're looking at him and he waves his hands and he goes, I'm with them. And okay, yeah, because you're not with us. And he opens up the back door and he takes out his kilt. He's the bagpiper.
Oh.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
No, he had to be authentic. I have one more short tale. My husband's great grandmother was buried in Nyack, New York. I've been to this location of the cemetery, and there's a lot of critters around. You wouldn't think of that because you're only an hour from New York City. But because she was buried way back when, of course, the coffin collapsed underneath with her bones and created a cavern that was taken over by a fox family.
Oh.
And they haven't bothered to fix it. I don't think they care so much about fixing things there. We've tried to get it fixed, but at least someone else gets some use out of it.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right, anything else? All right, well, thanks for listening.
Paul.
Very
That was
good.
a really good, yeah,
Very
That was
good.
good.
yes,
Thank you very much.
very good.
All right, you're welcome. All right, so now, without further ado, we'll head into our official meeting. And let's see, let's start off with a secretary's report. Tracy?
All right. Okay, and for those of you, if you're not muted, if you're going to be moving around, maybe you can just mute. Otherwise, that's fine. You can always keep it unmuted if you have questions or comments. But I'll let you manage that. Okay, let's see. The minutes as of April 4th, Paul kicked off the evening's meeting at 7 p.m., welcoming attendees to our monthly Zoom meeting. The meeting started with the evening's program. Oops, and I'm reading my wrong one. Hold on. Sorry. Oh, no. I was so organized. That's my mistake right there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so. Okay, sorry, March 7th via Zoom. Paul kicked off the evening's meeting at 7 p.m. to welcome our attendees to our monthly Zoom meeting. The meeting started with the evening's program with Roseanne Adams and Jan Sarabona presenting the history of the Eliot Old Town Hall and the high school buildings. The presentation will be posted on the website and made available to the public. The secretary's report. Tracy read the secretary's report dated February 7th. The minutes were approved with 3 corrections. The Pam read the treasurer's report for the period of February 1st through February 28th, and the treasurer's report was approved with no corrections. We had just the update for the program committee, which Paul would be giving a talk on the cemeteries in Eliot and the website project. That's tonight. Under old business, Paul provided an update on the work completed on the number 8 schoolhouse. The work on the new roof has been completed and the exterior of the building has been painted. This spring, the repair of the ceiling is scheduled to be completed. Jan is looking for volunteers for the summer schedule with the hope to offer additional days for the school to be open to the public. Paul also confirmed that the work efforts on the cemetery website is ongoing with the current focus on the Brooks and Mount Pleasant cemeteries. Under new business, Paul recommended that we discuss the plans for future meetings as to whether we gather in person or continue to meet via Zoom. At our next meeting, we'll put forward the vote to the attendees. Tracy shared that she, Roseanne, and Paul met to discuss the future program ideas on Native American history in Eliot and the surrounding areas. We also discussed the idea of adding a timeline to the website, and this would make it easy to display and connect a lot of the great information that's currently stored on our website. The effort for this is ongoing, will be ongoing over the coming months. The attendees of the meeting were totaled 19. Respectfully submitted, Tracy Graffam Dixon on April 4th, 2022.
All right, thank you, Tracy. Does anybody detect any errors or omissions in Tracy's report? If not, I'll declare them accepted as read. Pam, welcome. Do you have a treasurer's report?
I do. It's for the period of March 1st through March 31st. The building fund total, the beginning balance was $51,788.60. The interest was $2.20 with an ending balance of $51,790.80. On the checking account, the beginning balance was $7,004.76. Income was $20 from a donation from someone buying the Seacoast Rep tickets. Our expenses were CMP, $19.65, storage, $100. Newsletter supplies was $153.59. School displays, the ink and paper was $63.07. Cemetery supplies were $117.79. And the Maine Archives and Museums membership was $35 with an ending balance of $6,535.66. Respectfully submitted, Pam Ashley.
All right, thank you, Pam. Does anybody detect any errors or omissions in the treasurer's report? If not, I'll declare them accepted as read. So we'll run through some of the committees. Sylvia, anything on membership?
No, but I do have a check here for a membership and I will drop it off at your house. Or Pam, you're at work during the day, right? Pam?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll drop it by Paul.
Okay.
Maybe, are you and Julie somebody there tomorrow morning? Because we got to run an errand.
Yep.
Okay.
That'll be good.
All righty.
And I can swing by tomorrow and get it, Paul, because I got to drop off the envelope for Julie for the last year's stuff. So I
Okay.
can drop that off tomorrow afternoon.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. We'll connect.
Right,
That worked,
right.
that worked out good. All right, programs, Roseanne and Jan.
Right here.
Anything for programs?
We haven't figured out, I guess, what we're gonna do for May.
Okay. To be determined. Collections, Julie?
So yes, we had a nice collection of pictures that was donated from Mary Carter. She is the daughter of a teacher that taught at the Laura V. Dame School. Her mother's name was Jeanette Gordon, and she taught at Laura V. Dame between 1938 and 36, 37, 38, 39. And so she gave us a collection of pictures. So I've been working on those, trying to scan some, trying to make up some new things for the school to display those. So that was our last acquisition. So that was really nice. So that's all I have for collection.
All right. Thank you.
Julie, what was the name of the school she taught at? I didn't quite hear
The
you.
Laura V. Dame School. The Laura V. Dame.
I'll send you an email.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Well, no, it's not the V or the euro. Okay, the next thing I have is the building, but I'm going to let Jan talk about what's going on with the number 8 schoolhouse. Jan?
Okay, so I'm assuming you're talking about the work on this, on setting the school up for the second graders this year. We have a gentleman who's his family's working on putting the sliders. We're going to pay for the material. And we were lucky enough to get a grant to help to pay for the material, and he's going to do the work. And so all the desks at the schoolhouse are going to be mounted on sliders, so it'll be safer for the kids to sit at that when they come to visit this year, probably late May. And then we also, the other part of the grant is going to have us work on a partnership with middle school, trying to have the opportunity to work with those students as they do, learn more about history of Eliot and South Berwick and Rollinsford.
Yep. And quickly want to tell everybody what your schedule is for the schoolhouse during the summer?
What we're looking at right now is we'll be open, the first time we'll be open will be the 30th, will be Memorial Day after the ceremony. And then we'll be open the first and third Saturday of the month through September. And then hopefully, depending on what might happen, we might see if we can't there are some kids who are interested in some community service, and maybe we have other members who might be interested in working, so we might have some other opportunities to have it open, but we haven't got any further than that. And it's always open by appointment, so people can contact me and I'll arrange to come down and open it up and show them around. They have
Right.
family visiting or things like that.
Great. Yep, thank you. And just to restate what she said, they applied for, with the help of Helen Goranson, they applied for a grant to pay for some of this, and they got it. And so, yeah, great job, Jan, doing that.
And
All right, that's all I have.
one other question I just had, Jan, if you're still there, you mentioned a second effort. So after you talked about the grant for mounting the desks, you mentioned a second effort with this 3 schools. Well, could you just repeat that?
What it is we have a partnership, and we've had it for many years with the second grade. That's why we do the history with the second grade students. So we're looking to form the same type of partnership at the middle school level with the kids up there, depending on as they do their hike through history. So that's what the second part of the grant is going to be. One part is to get the desks on sliders so that the kids have a safer experience, and other people do when they come to visit. And then the other part is to get ourselves involved with the Marshwood Middle School.
Got it. Thank you very much.
All right. The next thing I have is just to let everybody know, in case you didn't know, Roseanne wrote up a very wonderful annual report for the Historical Society, which will be included in the town's book, the annual report for the town. And so thank you again, Roseanne, for doing that. So the next thing I have is new business. And as we look ahead to May, our next meeting, next monthly meeting will be May 2nd. And so we have a whole bunch of options here. with COVID getting better, and I don't know how comfortable you people, you guys are, but we could go inside. And if we go inside, we could go in the Grange, or we could go in the Congregational Church, or somebody mentioned that, you know, a room in the town hall, or we could go outside, and which would go to Dead Duck again, or we can do Zoom. I would throw out there, regardless of what we do, we would still do Zoom so that people, if they don't want to attend, can still be a part of the meeting. And then Tracy pointed out, if we do Zoom, we got to make sure there's electricity and internet. And so Dead Duck is not the best for that. So I guess I'll kind of have an open forum here. Does anybody have any, you know, first of all, are you ready to go back inside? If you say no, that's quite all right. Now, since nobody's offering anything.
Paul, I'll throw out there, I'd like to see how it would be to meet at the town hall and to at least have the Zoom call happening from there, maybe, and anybody who wants to attend in person can. There's plenty of parking. It's well lit, the access is easy, and it's warm.
Right.
Because it's late right now, so 8:23, it's gonna be dark.
Right, and then that offers basically both options. If only 4 people are comfortable meeting indoors, that works, and then everybody else can be on Zoom. So, or if 20 people show up, that's, you know, so that's what I was kind of thinking the same thing, that we would have maybe the May meeting in the town hall, and then maybe the June meeting in the Congregational Church, if things are favorable in that direction, all things considered, community-wise, COVID-wise, participant-wise, and compare the 2 venues and see if and what we might want to do in the future. How does that sound? What, about doing that in May? We'll tentatively go to the town hall in May. We'll check, make sure the room's available. That sound good? Shaking heads? Yes, no?
That works for me because I might be in upstate New York again, so.
Okay. Yeah, the Zoom, and we probably need to select a permanent Zoom person. The Zoom part of this is wonderful because it captures each meeting as a historical thing, and can be put on our website. And we talked about recording our meetings, and this is a perfect way of doing that. It ends up being a 2-way media where you can participate in the meeting as well as we're capturing it for historical reasons. So that's how we'll head. But hopefully everybody here gets Roseanne's email with the newsletter. And if you don't, please speak up and we'll make sure you do. And so look for that newsletter to tell you where to go if you want to meet in person. All right, that's all I had. Does anybody have any? I just want to, I guess the last thing, another big thank you to Tracy for setting up this Zoom meeting and all she does, and to Roseanne for all of her efforts and behind the scenes. So thank you guys. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to bring up? Roseanne?
Carol Hutchins is here, and we did receive the information that you sent to us on the on Vera Cole, who took over, I think, the northern part of Lot 34 at Mount Pleasant. We have the I guess it would be an agreement or a deed to it, and she also sent her Hutchins family genealogy, showing how Vera Cole comes down through her her father, Frank Hutchins, and Emma Thompson Hutchins.
That's in my mother's handwriting.
Is that really?
It is,
Oh,
yeah. I have made photocopies, yeah.
I thought it was you. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And so that lot 34 is the Pearl Coal lot. I'm sure Paul knows that. And also the death certificate for Elton Cole, which was her first husband, correct?
Correct. I never met him, yes.
Okay. All right. And so we have that too to go with the cemetery records. And I wanted to thank Carol for sending those down. That's very unusual. And she also sent her dues, which I'll pass on to
Thank you.
Pam. But thank you so much for that. You know, it's wonderful
Thank
to
you.
get. And the second thing was April 11th, Jan and I are going to go down to the town hall. We were talking with the town planner, Jeff, and he hadn't seen the display at the school that we did on trains and trolleys. And so I suggested we could probably set it up at the town hall. And he said that'd be wonderful because of the upcoming months. One is transportation, bicycle month, and the other is walking month. And so he's going to set up a small display next to our display that'll fit right in there with the trains and the trolleys. Something old and then something new that they're working on in the town. So we'll be doing that April 11th.
Terrific. Thank you. Anybody else?
Paul,
All
I
right.
just have a couple things I wanted to mention. I met on another topic, I met with Jan over at the elementary school on Saturday, talking about some garden work there. And I got a chance to see the display, Roseanne, that both you and Jan put up on Main Street and then the school. And I think Paul and I were discussing this, but we thought, you know, maybe going forward, we'll try to get this documented, these amazing displays for those of you who haven't had a chance to go or don't have a need to go into the elementary school. It's hard to see them. So I was trying to think of a way we could document those so that all that effort that it's amazing how much effort and time and all the information that you provide in those displays, which is wonderful for the elementary kids, but it's not getting seen by us and maybe other members of the community. So how we can document that and then put it up onto our website to capture all that information, because it's amazing what you did with the map and the current pictures and the old pictures of the buildings that are still standing. So I just wanted to mention that. And then also I did talk with a young man who just started working over at York Woods Garden Club. And his name is Zeke or Ezekiel. He's from Marshwood. He's a sophomore. And he's definitely interested in the cemetery program. We were talking about the gardens at the elementary school. And then I mentioned the Historic Society. And he said, oh, you know, there's a lot of people that want to volunteer and help and do some work. So I'll email you, Roseanne, but I think you already know her name, Morgan, I think she's one of the counselors, the student counselors, and she manages the volunteer program at Marshwood High School. So we might get some more volunteers. I think, is that coming through to you or is that going to Paul? Probably Roseanne.
Yeah.
Yeah, it goes through the Historical Society and comes right over to me.
Okay, all right. But I mean, yeah, in terms of her contact, I don't know if we want to reach out to her. I can reach out to her, or if you want to reach out to the student council. I have her name or what have you. So I said I'd reach out.
It would be good to have that because I don't have that.
Okay, great. So I just want to share those two things.
We sent over a flyer to the high school for volunteers to put up on their wall. So I'm sure by now it's up there.
Okay, all right, we'll make sure she knows about it. Great.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? All right, well, thanks for coming and enjoy the rest of the month, and we'll see you next month. And Tracy, if you could hang around just a little bit.
Sure.
We don't know where we're going yet.
Have a good
Night,
week. Paul. Good
everybody.
luck.
Bye.
Night, thank you.
Nice to see
Good
you.
night.
Yeah, can you
Good
see
to
that?
see you.
Can you see that?